and welcome to Behind the Book. We are so excited to turn the tables today on our normal host, Koch, and talk to him about Fredda. Are you ready?
I am so ready.
We're going to talk to him about his book, Magic Time.
Yay.
Hey, we all have our copies.
So for those of you who remember, on November 23rd, 2019, Koch came to campus when this series was called the Author Series and was interviewed by Pete Hammond of Deadline about this fantastic book. Koch is the ultimate storyteller. He knows everybody in Hollywood. Everyone loves him. He brings the party with him wherever he goes. But I would, Koch, thanking you also for your involvement always in MPTF, because you are on our board, you are a great supporter, and we love you more than we can ever thank you for. But I'd kind of like to kick this off with a question, if I may. 1964, you were in the epicenter of the music that was emerging in London. And this is the time that I would have loved to have been part of. It must have been so exciting. Can you kind of tell us about how you got into that, how that happened, and how it affected your life, and some of the scandalous stories that you can share with us?
I don't know if they're scandalous, but yeah, I was a huge John F. Kennedy fan. And November 22nd, 1963, as many of you remember, JFK was assassinated.
Yeah.
And I was a freshman at UCLA at the time. And I was destroyed, really. I happened to be at a Crown Zellerback paper company in downtown LA when it happened, getting crepe paper because that night was UCLA homecoming. And I was helping build the float. And I was told as a pledge to go get more paper. And while I was in the Crown Zellerback, we heard over the radio that he had been shot. And it was pretty traumatic. And as I was driving back on the Hollywood freeway, we heard that JFK had died. And it was one of the most, I don't know what, emotional moments of my life. And as I pulled off to the side of the road, because I wasn't safe to drive, many, many other cars also pulled off to the side of the road for all of us to try and get our act together and go on to wherever we were having to go. I came back to UCLA and everything had stopped. I went on to the whole big, I guess, whatever, the quad in front of Royce Hall. And there must have been 5,000 students just on the ground, crying, holding each other, listening to the radio. And I went home that day and went back to my parents' house and locked the door and didn't leave my room. That Friday, that Saturday, and that Sunday is when, because I watched television through the entire thing and actually watched Lee Harvey Oswald get shot by Jack Ruby. And I really didn't want to go back to school. And I was fortunate enough, a few weeks later, my dad and mom were having a dinner party and they were all sitting around in the dining room and I came in, I was introduced to everybody and I started talking to this one man. His name was Harold Davison. Mm-hmm. He was British. And he told me that he was a booking agent in London. Well, I loved dancing and I knew every word to every song of the 50s and 60s. And I don't know where it came from, but I said, hey, any chance I could get a job at your office? And he kind of took aback, but he said, oh, yes, I mean, if you want to start in the mailroom, why not? Come on over. And I literally, in 1964, went to London, got what they called a cold water flat. I won't have to go into that, but it was tiny. And I got a job making 12 pounds a week, which was about 22 bucks a week, living in this flat. And I was working in his mailroom.
Wow.
And within about 3 weeks, I guess I was doing a good job. He said to me, you know, all these young American rock groups that come over, I've got this older British guy who picks them up at the airport. Do you think you could pick them up at Heathrow, get them to their hotel, get them to their TV shows and all the other things? And I said, yeah, I've been organizing my whole life. And he gave me the job. And so my job was to pick up rock and roll groups, American rock groups. And the first one I picked up was a young singer named Leslie Gore, for all of you who might remember,
Wow.
It's My Party, I'll Cry If I Want To, her mother, and a young music producer by the name of Quincy Jones. Now, you know, I only knew It's My Party and It's Judy's Turn to Cry, but I picked them up. I took them to the Mayfair Hotel, which was in I can't remember, in the middle of, you know, what it's called. I can't remember.
Is it in Belgravia?
Maybe Belgravia, yeah. And as I said, I was making 12 pounds a week, but once I got to be the person picking them up, Mr. Davison said, well, now you have an expense account, so pay for whatever it is you need for them. Well, there was a new discotheque that had just opened in Paris about 6 months before. They had opened a discotheque called New Jimmy's, for those of you who might remember. And just recently they had opened up in London a place called the Ad Lib. It was up a freight elevator off of Leicester Square. And you opened up, and in it was a kind of a dark 2 rooms. One had a few tables and a couple of couches and a piano that had been holed out. And in the piano was a record player to play 45s. And there was a guy named Teddy, who, an African-American gentleman, who played the songs. And in the second room were more banquettes and more tables. Only you couldn't get in unless you were somebody. Because that night, that first night I went in there with Leslie Gore, her mother, and Quincy Jones, the first person I saw was Dusty Springfield. Then I saw the Beatles, the Stones, Marianne Faithfull, Chad and Jeremy. I mean, you name it, they were there. I was awestruck, but it was fantastic. Then I took Leslie the next day to, for those of you residents who might remember Shindig or Hullabaloo, which we had in the States, they had Thank Your Lucky Stars and Ready, Steady, Go. And I had to take, I can't remember which one. I think it was Ready, Steady, Go. We took Leslie and she sang the song. And then we went up to, I guess it was Manchester, where Thank Your Lucky Stars were. And Leslie was on the show, and they were introducing a new group, Herman's Hermits. Mm-hmm. And the Kinks were brand new. The Yardbirds were brand new. Came back, did whatever, and I became friends with Leslie. We were around the same age. And one day, as I was getting ready to pick her up, Leslie said, well, will you come up to my suite? And I thought, what's going on here? And I came up there and she said, listen, you really know your music. I've just recorded a new song and I'd love your opinion. And wow. I'm thinking, wow, Leslie Gore, I'm just some kid, right?
So you were what, like 23 at the time?
How old? I was
22?
18.
18? Oh my gosh.
I was 18. And she played on a little tape recorder, You Don't Own Me. And she said, what do you think? And I said, well, Leslie, it's nothing like Judy's Turn to Cry and It's My Party, but it really shows depth as to who you are becoming as an artist. And I love it. Mm-hmm. And she said, oh, thank you very much. You know, it was terrific. I was the first one to hear You Don't Own Me.
It's amazing.
And so she left. And like a day later, I had to pick up one of my favorite groups, the Ronettes.
Oh,
Three
wow.
girls who, you know, Ronnie Bennett, the lead singer of the Ronettes, ended up later marrying Phil Spector, who produced all the Ronettes. And I'm sure all of you remember Phil Spector's Wall of Sound. So I picked them up. They didn't get to stay at the Mayfair in Belgravia. I think they stayed at the Strand Palace.
We
which
have an
was
update,
down-
Hawk. We have an update on the Mayfair. It was in Berkeley Square.
Sorry, Berkeley Square. Yes, thank you. And they stayed at the Strand Palace, like in Charing Cross,
Mhm.
because they were Black and they didn't have the wherewithal. So that night, I said to them, I'm taking you to the ad lib. And they said, what's the ad lib? I said, wait till you see it. And I brought them. And again, all the British music groups were there.
Wow.
And Ringo Starr came over and asked Ronnie Bennett if she'd like to dance. And so, you know, sure, Ronnie got up and they were dancing. And Nedra, one of the other girls in the Ronettes, said, Howard, do you like to dance? And I said, yeah, I love to dance. She says, come on, let's dance. So we danced, and I'm telling you, I mean, I was in heaven. I was just in heaven. And when the song was over, Ronnie Bennett, and I apologize for this, but Ronnie Bennett said to me a compliment that I've never, I don't think it's ever been topped. She said to me, Howard, you dance like an N-word. And I thought, wow, because African Americans have way more soul than any white person I ever knew. And
The next time Jen has a dance party, we're featuring you.
I don't know what dance party is, but I'm going to Jen's kitchen and doing disco. Oh, well, that's me with Mamie Van Doren. Yeah, that was at a rap party for a movie called The Girl in Black Stockings in Kanab, Utah, when I was 13 years old, I think. And Mamie Van Doren was as hot as Jane Mansfield or Marilyn Monroe. And for a 13-year-old.
I seem to remember in the book you talked about where your eyesight was in comparison to Mamie,
yes,
and how you've been.
It was straight ahead, and I reached puberty at that very moment. So, at any rate, I continued in London. I continued in London and had a great time. And what I didn't know is Harold Davison said to me, well, you know, me and Dave Clark owned the Dave Clark Five, and the DC Five were as big as the Beatles in the summer of 1964. As a matter of fact, they sold over 7 million records, which was more than the Beatles did in 1964. And he said, we're going to do a US and Canada tour. I'd like you on the tour as a roadie. Would you like to go? Are you kidding me? I
like
had
a dream
friends
come
in colleges all over the States. I'd be able to see each one of them, and I'd be with the Dave Clark Five. And when I looked at the tour, every place we went, we were playing with Chuck Berry or Roy Orbison or Little Anthony and the Imperials, Jay and the Americans, the Shirelles, you name it. So we did 48 cities in 52 days. And let's just say that I came of age.
Quite an initiation.
Yes, that was quite an initiation.
How long did you continue in the music industry? Where did that take you?
Not very long, because after 52 days, which ended just before Christmas of 1964, I came home, didn't go back to London, and I said, whew, I'm tired. And what I really want to do was go in the movie business. And I was fortunate enough to, my dad at the time was head of Paramount Pictures. And I had a very difficult relationship with him. Not that we didn't love each other, but we didn't talk very much to each other. And for me to ask a favor was a big deal.
Yeah.
Can I
and we went
interrupt?
into his office at Paramount.
I'm
And
going to interrupt the story really
Sure.
quickly, and we'll pick it back up. But I have a resident on the line who would like to ask you a couple of questions. Go ahead,
Sure.
Andrew.
Absolutely. Who is it?
It's Andrew.
Andrew. Oh, am I allowed to say his last name? Is that David's? Is that yes? Okay. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Hawk. How you doing?
All right, buddy. Good to hear your voice.
I love your book. Are you planning on writing another one? And when might that happen?
I wasn't planning on it. I've got a lot more stories, but I'm actually really enjoying being an interviewer at the Motion Picture Fund, and I'm starting to do things called the behind the silver screen. And maybe, Andrew, in the next couple of weeks, I can interview you. Jen, what do you think?
I love that idea.
Yeah. I've known Andrew only since 19.
I believe we are hearing Andrew say, "Whenever you want me, I'm there."
Yes,
Will you do it, Andrew? Great.
absolutely. You tell me what time to be there, and I'll put my best Sunday best clothes on.
All right, Andrew.
Perfect.
I'll see you soon, buddy.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Andrew.
Love to everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. If you didn't hear that, he said thanks and love to everybody.
Right. Yeah, he's an old friend. Happy that he's happy at the home, so I'm thrilled for him.
So where we left off is you were at your dad's office in Paramount.
Yeah, and I said, "Is there any way you can help me get a job?" And he said, "Sure," and that was the end of the conversation. I mean, it was like, okay. The first job I got was an assistant to a producer named Carol Case, who was making two, I wouldn't say B movies or C movies, probably D movies. Definitely not A movies. They each took 5 days to make. One was called Billy the Kid versus Dracula, and the other was Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter. I actually have a DVD of, and I'm not a DVD. I have an 8-track or something, whatever, a VHS, and there's no VHS players anymore. But I want to watch it.
We have a VHS that we can use to convert. It's a machine that will convert VHS to DVD.
I'm bringing it. I want to watch this movie. They each took 5 days, and for those of you in the movie business, and I have a lot of you out there watching, we'd have the stagecoach go left to right down the dirt road, and then instead of taking the time to go back for take 2, we'd say, all right, for the other movie, we'll go right to left, and the stagecoach will go away from us. That was
breaking news. Billy the Kid versus Dracula is now available on Blu-ray.
Wow.
Thank you, Nate. Nate's on with us, and eventually I'm hoping Nate will also open his camera up, because last week on Cinephiles, which is our hour-long panel discussion about movies that we love, we focused on Michael Apted.
Well, I did a movie with Michael, a movie called Corky Park, and I actually was with Michael. I had lunch with him a year ago to this month, and he told me that he was having some real memory problems, and it was very sad. Great director, great drama director, great documentarian, and yeah, he was really good. And I always think of irony. I don't know the rest of you. I don't know if irony is the right word, but I guess it was about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Molly and I were talking about something. I know, it was about Johnny Cash, and then we got to what's her name?
Patsy Cline.
No. Sissy Spacek in
Coal
Miner's Daughter.
Coal Miner's Daughter. Yes. Oh my gosh.
How can we not remember? Anyway, Molly had never seen Coal Miner's Daughter.
Loretta Lynn.
I said, "Oh, you've got to see it," and I ran we ran on whatever way you get to see them today. Maybe it was Criterion, Coal Miner's Daughter. And it was the next morning that I got the call that Michael had passed away. And so it's like, come on, how does that, why does that happen? It's one of those, I don't know things.
We're going to try and find a way to show the 7-Up series.
Ah,
It's not available in the US. It's available in the UK and in Canada, but like 63 Up was the last one, and you just can't find it here. So
okay, remind me after, because I'll make a call to AMC, which owns Odeon in England, and I'll bet you my contacts there can probably get us something.
that would be incredible. I
Yeah.
know a couple of the
Love to do
residents.
that.
That's
That would
great.
be great for our residents too, and
Yeah.
our Facebook friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so you shot this Stagecoach going one way. You had the Stagecoach turn around and went the other way for the other movie.
I mean, they each took 5 days to make, and that were the first 2 movies that I actually got paid on. I mean, I'd been on a movie set my whole life. So after that, I was lucky enough to get a job as the assistant production manager, not a DGA job, for a big movie that was being made by Ray Stark and Seven Arts called This Property is Condemned. And the production manager, Clarence Urist, was a little upset that I got the job because he wanted his son to get the job. And the movie was to shoot in New Orleans, Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, which is in the middle of nowhere, kind of your armpit, and Los Angeles, on stages in Los Angeles. And he thought to get rid of me, he'd send me down, because we were going to start shooting in Mississippi. So I went down there and he said, now I want you to get all the location agreements. I want you to make sure construction's on budget. I want you to, get all the extras ready, the background actors. I want you to look for casting for tiny roles. I mean, gave you a whole slew of things to do, thinking I'm now 19, thinking that, I'm going to screw up and he'll be able to get rid of me. Well, I'd been in the business since I was 4 years old, and I was always an organizer. I made movies in high school. I ran, that's what I did. And luckily, the construction coordinator, the location accountant, Academy Award winning production designer, Stephen Grimes, wonderful man, won an Oscar for Out of Africa. And the set decorator, Bill Kiernan, really helped me and kind of showed me the ropes when I was down there. And one of the stories, I don't know, should I tell this story? I guess so. One of the stories was I had to go to the principal of the White Elementary School, 1965, in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, because I needed little kids to be, background actors in the story. And for those of you who don't know, I think everybody at the residence does know, what you have to do is you have to take pictures of all the little kids that will do it. You go ahead and get their measurements. When wardrobe comes down there, they'll wardrobe all of them for the 1930s, because it was a period piece. Wardrobe, they'll hang on racks, and when we need 5 kids, you call in those 5 of those 10 kids or 20 kids, put them in their outfits, and we're ready to go. So I went to the principal of the elementary school and I explained what it is I needed. And he said, well, none of my little white kids gonna play with you could imagine what he said. And I was 19 and a bit aghast because I had never seen that kind of racism before. I had heard all about it and watched, this was the civil rights issues that were going on. And then he looked at me and he kept looking at the top of my head and he said, Mr. Koch, he said, you a Jew? Well, at 19 years old, I was looking for wardrobe myself because I was shaking in my boots. And I said, yes, I'm Jewish. And he kept looking at the top of my head and said, you know, I've never seen a Jew before up close. Well, I learned my first real lesson about anti-Semitism that day.
Was that the
That's
first
one of
time?
the-
Was that
I'm
the
sorry,
first
go ahead,
time?
Fredda.
Was that the first time you had encountered that? Anything like that?
First time I had encountered anything like that, because I had lived, you know,
Los Angeles,
a
London.
Los Angeles life.
Yeah.
I had encountered in 1964 when I was on the tour with the Dave Clark Five. We were in Birmingham, Alabama, and I was setting things up, you know, hours before the show that night, and I was walking around the arena, and I had to go pee, and I went into a bathroom, said men, and I walked in there, and I was at the urinal, and a black man came in and looked at me really strange. Didn't say anything, and I finished and walked outside. And when I walked outside, some white guy walked by and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I didn't know what he was talking about. I was 18 then, and I looked up, and I had not seen the word colored. It was colored men. And so that was the first time I really, in person, felt the racism of, you know, what is unfortunately still going on. And I'm really happy that that Joe Biden is working really hard to make some changes in that. Yeah.
In a different track from that same story, you have acting chops. Like your portrayal of that moment. Yeah. Like, Fredda, do you agree? Like,
Absolutely. I think a whole new career, Hawk.
I felt that I was back in that moment.
I think Mark Rydell's there, maybe watching. Maybe Mark direct another movie. You can hire me. So, at any rate, that was I got to work on that movie, and I guess one of my great stories is my Natalie Wood story. I think maybe you want to hear that. This movie was being directed by Sidney Pollack.
Well, wait, I'm sorry. You didn't quite finish the story that you started. So you experienced this racism, but you were sent to Mississippi as kind of a way to get you off the project.
Yes. Well, what happened is, yes, thank you. You know my book as well as I do, Jen.
This book?
What happened is, again, I made a kind of a young person's mistake, because 2 weeks before shooting, when Sidney Pollack and our cinematographer, Oscar-winning cinematographer James Wong Howe, and Ray Stark, and the producer of the film, the famous John Houseman, came down with Clarence Urist to scout the locations that Stephen Grimes had set up, and, you know, do all the preparation that needed the last 2 weeks. We were walking on this one street, and Sidney said to Clarence, "Hey, Clarence, can I use that? I'd like to shoot over there at that those buildings over there." And Clarence didn't say anything very quickly, and I went, "Oh, sure. Well, that's Mrs. O'Reilly's house, and I've got a location agreement right here if you want to shoot." And everybody looked and said, "Who's this kid?" Right? Well, Mr. Urist wasn't real happy with me, and I realized, no, I should have quietly given the location agreement to Mr. Urist and let him tell it, but I was kind of excited. And so on day one of shooting, I had a lot of jobs to do. I was running all over the place. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, the first AD, who was a wonderful man and very experienced, had hurt his leg, actually, a few weeks before, and we were working at a railroad trestle, and he had to keep going up and down this railroad trestle to get to where the filming was. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, he said, "I quit." He quit the movie, and he walked away, got in a car, and left. Well, the second AD, who had only been a second, becomes the first AD, and they need a second AD. And they said, "Well, hey, Howie, you know what you're the second AD today." I said, "What? I'm a second AD? Okay." right? And I'm doing second AD work. And for, every day I'm doing second AD work, and the second's the first. Only what they didn't tell me was they weren't happy with him as a first. He was inexperienced. And so they brought down a very experienced new first assistant director. So the second, who had become the first, said, I'm not going back to second, I quit. So now the first and second that had prepped the movie both quit. So now, and there's a new first AD who's a really good guy, an older gentleman who, again, knew the whole job, but had no continuity on the movie. And the only person with continuity, hello, here I am. So I'm now the second AD, and it's 1965, and there weren't a lot of people available in the Directors Guild. So the production company asked, because they liked the job I was doing, asked if I could get a waiver to be the second AD on the film. Well, I didn't know it at the time, but that was a real stroke of luck for me, because the film shot for 105 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's some funny stories in there too.
Was that
But
the schedule?
the schedule was probably, I don't know, 70, 75 days, something like that.
Wow.
But the Taft-Hartley Rule says anybody who works over 90 days in a union job cannot be kept out of the union. Excuse me. So I had worked over 90 days. So eventually, within a few years, I went back and asked if I could get in and into the DGA, and showed all these call sheets and everything that I had been the second AD, and they had to let me in. So I have a funny Sidney Pollack story that's not in the book, but
Which book? This book?
yeah, I don't think it is. Thank you, Jen. We're shooting on the stage in Los Angeles, averaging about a half a page a day.
Sorry, hold on one second. We're having a little hiccup with our computer, which has happened. To give you a little bit of background, last Friday, our power supply fried. And we scrambled to try and find a new power supply, which we got. But the broadcast system itself, the TriCaster, is on its last legs. The phone call that I got a little earlier was from Manhattan Beach Studios. We are trying to get a discount on a new TriCaster because MPTF Studios is not terribly well funded. We are a small part of a huge charity that has been giving people assistance and funding through a pandemic. I don't know if you guys have heard about this pandemic. There's a global pandemic happening right now.
No, I got a shot yesterday.
Yes.
Do you think that the TriCaster got COVID?
It may have. I mean, we've been really protective of the bubble that we've created in the theater, but the TriCaster may be sick with COVID. I don't know.
Oh, we're out totally. Facebook and
No.
No.
We're totally fine. The TriCaster just glitched. It's been glitching frequently. Hopefully our contacts at Manhattan Beach Studios will help us find a lower cost for this machinery that we need. But hey, we're on Facebook now, and I wanted to explain why the glitch occurred and what we are trying to do to fix it.
Got it.
So
back to Pollack.
Yes, back
So,
to Pollack.
I don't know what you heard, but Sidney Pollack was averaging about a half a page a day. Hence, we shot 105 days. And
was this super early for him?
This was his second film.
Second film, yeah.
His first film was The Slender Thread, starring Anne Bancroft and Sidney Poitier. This was his second film. But on the stage, there used to be, for those of you who remember, there was a high desk with a phone on it. And there was a red light. And when the phone rang, second AD me, I'd have to answer the phone. And I answered the phone. They said, can I speak to Sidney Pollack, please? Who's calling? This is the production manager of Ben Casey. Ben Casey, if all of you remember, was a very big hit television show. And Sidney came to the phone and answered it and hung up and said, Jesus, hey, what are you doing tomorrow, Howie? And I said, I don't know, it's Saturday. Why? He said, the director on Ben Casey didn't finish his episode, and they want me to come in tomorrow and finish the episode for him, and I'm going to help him out. So we shot a half a page on Friday of This Property is Condemned. Sidney Pollack, along with me as second, third, eighth AD, shot 12 pages of Ben Casey on Saturday, and he went back and shot a quarter of a page a day on Monday. Well, as it turned out, Sidney had shot like 30 Ben Caseys as a director before he became a film director. Sidney knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. There's another great Sidney story. I love Sidney. I got to do another movie with him called The Way We Were. And the last scene in the movie, for those of you who remember The Way We Were, is shot in front of the Plaza Hotel, and Barbara and Bob haven't seen each other in a while, and he's about to get into a cab, and he sees Barbara across the way, and they come together, and all the heartstrings that are pulled because they both always loved each other. And when the movie came out, all these critics were saying, what a smart idea to have a low shot of Barbara and Bob for that. And it was Sidney Pollack's genius to shoot low on that. And Sidney and I always used to laugh about it, because the truth was we couldn't stop the traffic on 59th and 5th Avenue. So the only thing we could do was shoot up. But Sidney said, hey, I'll take the credit. It had nothing to do with his directorial talent, let's say. It's a great story.
It's amazing.
But I love the way your career just blossomed. It was, first of all, you being you and getting things done and being organized, as you said, but also just chance and circumstance played into it, like so many great Hollywood stories.
Luck, but you have to be prepared for the luck.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to, I had some great mentors. Just a man named Dave Salvin, for those of you who might remember David, great production manager, first AD, a man named Hank Moongene, another great first AD, another guy named Tony Ray. Tony Ray's got quite a story if you look him up. He was the son of Nicholas Ray, who was married to Carolyn Jones. And Tony Ray, his son, was also married to Carolyn Jones at one time. These are all Hollywood stories. I don't think Nick Ray or Tony are around anymore, or is Carolyn? I don't know. Maybe I could say that story.
Wow.
It's not in the book.
My one complaint about your book is they're great stories, but you only have a handful of photos in here.
Really?
I think that you should create like a Facebook album of other photos that go along with your stories and have it be kind of a digital walk through time.
Okay, well, that would be kind of hard to do, but I'd try it.
Well, you have all the photos behind you, for starters.
Yeah, but most of those are in the book, I think.
Oh, it's hard to see from where we are.
Yeah, a lot of them are. A lot of them are newer photos from when I was president of the Academy. But,
you were president of the Academy? What?
Second generation, how did that happen?
Yeah, I'm very proud of that. Just my dad and I. I don't know. I'm just very proud of the fact that when I got into the Producers Guild, there were about 350 members, and now we have 8,500. And I know that I had a little something to do with it. Not a lot, but had a lot of help from a lot of people.
What were some of the challenges you had when you were president? I mean, how
Of the Academy or the Producers Guild?
Well, you can start with either one, really.
And I would actually guide you toward talking about the Producers Guild first, because there's a tremendous amount that you did to transform the look of the Academy and the membership of the Academy. But what you did for the Producers Guild, and I agree, like you always have to credit the entire team. Film and television is a collaborative process, but you are justifiably credited as being the person who led the charge to get people to do the PGA mark, to take the Producers Guild seriously, to take their membership in the Producers Guild seriously. You need to just embrace that.
Well, okay, well, first of all, it wasn't just me with the Producers Mark. It was Vance Van Petten, our executive director, and Mark Gordon, my partner, on that. The three of us really worked hard on that. But if we go back a little ways, it's kind of one of those weird stories. I wasn't in the Producers Guild, and Chuck Freeze was, and everybody knows Chuck. And Chuck said, "Hey, will you join the Producers Guild and run as my vice president? Because I'm going to run for president." And I thought about it, and I thought, I really believe in helping the rights of the producer. I had been in the Directors Guild since 1968, and I worked very hard in the late 60s and early 70s for the rights of assistant directors and production managers and directors. And I thought, you know what, maybe now's a time that I should try and help producers and look out for our rights. And so I ran for vice president and I won. But unfortunately, Chuck Freeze didn't win for president, and someone else became president. But when his term ended, I wanted someone really important to become president of the. I'm like a worker bee, and I always like to put somebody who's more well known up there. And I called Kathy Kennedy, and I talked Kathy Kennedy into becoming president of the Guild. And that really changed things, because Kathy and I, Doug Wick, Mark Gordon, Larry Gordon, a whole bunch of us went up to Kathy's house and decided, because nobody knows what a producer does. And what we did is we put down a set of criteria, and it was Kathy's idea. Finding the project, financing, development, pre-production, production, post, marketing, and distribution. All of these things. And all of us sat around a big table and wrote down everything we thought that a producer does. Because as an actor, if Tom Hanks is out there, we all know that's Tom Hanks. If it says directed by Sidney Pollack, we know Sidney Pollack directed the film. But when it says produced by, and there's, a million people who all get the credit, we felt like we were being disrespected. So by putting this criteria down, we decided to give the Producers Guild Award to the person or persons who had actually done at least 50% of the work of a producer on that particular movie. And we started an arbitration process, which is still going on today. We've changed the criteria a little bit because of how the business has changed. But we're doing it. And what I was able to do, again, I was fortunate enough to be elected a governor of the Academy at that time, I think in 2003 or 4, something like that. And Kathy was a governor, as was Larry Gordon. So between the three of us, we were able to get the Academy to also use our arbitration system to decide who were the real producers, and they would get the Oscar. And if you remember, the Academy said only no more than 3. And so that's how that evolved. But then as more and more, we got the Golden Globes to agree to our arbitration. We got BAFTA to agree to our arbitration. And our arbitration system became kind of the norm. But Mark and I, when we became presidents of the Guild in 2010, we were looking for what's our legacy? What can we do to help the real producer of a movie? Not somebody who negotiates a credit or is somebody's uncle or cousin or friend or manager. And Vance said, I've tried before, but what about a good housekeeping seal of approval? And I said, what do you mean? I said, what if we had some kind of a mark, like, when you see a cinematographer afterwards, it says ASC. It means you know, they're a member of the American Society of Cinematographers, you know, or CES, Casting Society of America or something. We said, yeah, but anybody can put, you know, PGA. We say, yeah, but what if the PGA mark, little p period, little g period, little a period, not like professional golfers couldn't use PGA that way. What if that they got the mark if we had arbitrated and that person had done more than 50% of the producing functions? That would mean that that person really produced the movie. He or she could get all of those awards if he was nominated and if he won. And then the people who didn't get the mark were people that all of us would know, oh, he or she negotiated a credit. They really didn't produce the movie. And we thought that's a great idea. And Mark and I went, we went to every studio and every independent and talked to their studio heads, their creative guys, their legal guys, their business affairs guys and girls, sorry. And we kind of had a plan of if we could get 3 of the major studios to say yes, we could go forward. And we were lucky enough that I was friends with someone at one of the top people at one studio. Mark was friends with someone at another studio. And believe it or not, we got those 2 studios very fast. There's no, we're not a guild. We're not in a union. So there was no reason for them to have to do it. We don't negotiate. We don't have any, you know, we don't have any rights other than we're producers. And then we got the 3rd studio. And that was a combination of Mark and I getting it. And by hook or by crook, it took us 2.5 years. But now, when you see a movie, and I was just watching, I just watched a documentary last night on Taylor Swift, believe it or not. And when the credits came up at the end, there was a little PGA, P period, G period, A period, next to the producers. And 2 producers got the credit with the PGA and 1 didn't get the PGA. And Molly, who was sitting next to me watching it, said, aren't you proud? You know, and every time I see a movie with that PGA mark, it tells everybody in the world, those people really produced the movie. So I hope I wasn't too long-winded, but.
Not at all. Very, it's an important addition to augment the professionalism in our industry.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. I think, honestly, that's the best thing I ever did. I produced some movies that did okay and some that didn't do okay, but I think getting the producer's mark, I think I'm more proud of that than anything I've done in the industry.
It's really fantastic. And in some ways, it's kind of surprising that it took as long to get to that point. It seems so obvious that the people who are being recognized as actually producing the film should be. So yay to you and Mark and everybody else who worked on it. A great achievement.
Thank you. Yeah.
I would also offer one of the things that I would hope is way up there in terms of what you've done for this industry is when you went around to different union meetings and different guild meetings to share about what was happening with Motion Picture and Television Fund in one of the hardest periods in the last 50 years of this charity.
Thanks. Well, that was, yeah, I just, for bad or good, I kind of go in with snowshoes. If I believe in something, I don't understand the reason of holding back. Sometimes I don't have the best tact in the world, but especially at that time, I think there was a real worry that there was a revolution happening, taking place in all of our unions, DGA, WGA, SAG, Teamsters, everybody were thinking that, wait a minute, is the Motion Picture and Television Fund not a great place? And I had to just go to these places and stand up and kind of tell them. And I think because I come from below the line, you know, from being an assistant director and growing up in the business. And I work with the grips and electric and wardrobe, makeup, hair, that maybe I wasn't what they call a suit, you know? And I think maybe the union people, I think, trusted me a little more than they might have with someone who was a suit.
But you also have this incredible manner of not shying away from a problem. I see what you have done in your career as embracing the unknown, embracing that moment of uncertainty for what's going to happen next, and helping to kind of right the ship when things aren't smooth waters. And I think a lot of our best producers, that's what they excel at. That the director's got this creative vision and is kind of making sure that the story is held together, but the producer is dealing with the real world and the fantasy world. And when they are in, you know, direct conflict with each other, the producer has to marry those two to provide the playing field for every craftsperson that participates.
Well, I think being an assistant director was great training, because as an assistant director, you know what you're planning to do that day, but you also have to know in the back of your mind, what if it doesn't go well? What can I do instead? So preparation, as I say all the time, is everything, no matter what. I mean, if you look at Biden today and you watch these press conferences and you watch what he's doing, you know he was prepared to walk in and do exactly what he needs to do. I have total faith that we're going to turn around the distribution of vaccines. They're going to get in everybody's arms. I absolutely believe he's going to do that. And he's going to help with the, excuse me, $1.9 billion, you know, that thing. He's going to get it through Congress by hook or by crook. And it's going to help all the people that need it, you know, all the homeless and the hungry and everybody who needs whatever it is. He's going to do it. And that's because he was prepared and he hired good people around him.
And the parallel, dealing with drama or choosing not to deal with drama. One of the things that I know is currently in flux with a lot of people is you look at these impeachment hearings, and what you heard Biden say yesterday was a very realistic point of view of it. He's been in Congress in one way or another for 38 years. And to say, you know, is it proper to impeach him? Yes. Do I think it's realistic that he's going to be convicted? Probably not. But that's not changing whether or not people are eating tomorrow or getting vaccines into arms. Like, he's got a very clear point of view of what matters and what's drama for drama.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know, when you're working on movie sets, you have to push away the drama and get to the reality of what we're doing. Yeah, okay, it's raining and the lunches are here. What do? Hey, how about going to lunch? And maybe after lunch, maybe the rain will stop.
Or we'll figure out the cover set by that point.
Right. Right.
So I've asked Nate to join us because I know that he had some really great questions. There he is.
Hey, how's it going? Hi. So yeah, actually, because again, on Cinephiles, we just talked about this, and I just had a repeat viewing because I hadn't seen it in a long time. But I was wondering if you could talk a little more about Gorky Park, because it's a film that I've really had a soft spot for since it came out, and I think the history behind it is so interesting because it was, you know, based on a really big best-selling book, a really wonderful book, the first in a series with that character about a Russian military investigator.
Arkady Rinko.
Yes, Rinko. Played by William Hurt. And the fact that they tried to shoot it in Russia and kind of got stymied, and it wound up.
No. Sorry, I hate to contradict. We weren't going to shoot it in Russia, but they were never going to let us shoot in Russia.
Yeah, I know that. Just according to Apted, I know a long time ago, he said that they threw the idea out that it was sort of fanciful, like what if, you know.
Yes.
Like, at the time, it was just with the Cold War. It was like, no way. So it's like, how do you get around that? Like, you know.
Well, I was fortunate enough I was friends with the head of the MPAA in those years, remember Jack Valenti, who was powerful and great. And as a matter of fact, his daughter Courtney works with us and is a big part of the Motion Picture and Television Fund. So hi, Courtney, if you're listening. What we decided was, if my partner and I could get into Moscow, and I had a great Nikon camera, I always loved taking photographs, and maybe I could go around Russia, around Moscow, and shoot all the places that were, that we needed for the movie. Paul Silbert, an Academy Award winning and good friend of mine who's since passed away, was the production designer. And Dick Bruno, another great friend of mine, costume designer, said, well, while you're there, photograph the all the wardrobe, what everybody's wearing, and all the sets. And so anyway, I can't tell you how many rolls of film I shot, but when I got there, they put us in this big hotel, and we went up to the room, and the minute we got up to the room, we heard something outside the room. We looked outside, and there were 3 painters that were painting the wall right outside our room. Those painters never stopped painting for 4 days that we were in Moscow. They weren't painters. They were just listening to everything we were doing. But at any rate, I had a great time in Moscow, learning everything there. And we ended up shooting in Helsinki, which was, a neutral country, democratic. But while we shot, every day that we were filming, there were 4 men in Russia, the big fur hats, and they were obviously KGB, who stood right across the street from wherever our location was in Helsinki. And if you watch the film again, I thought Paul Silbert did an amazing job of art direction. We shot most of the film in Helsinki, and then we shot a little bit of the film outside of Stockholm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite an experience, and cold. But one other quick story, when we went there for a location scout, I guess it was in, I don't know, maybe October, November, we had this guy, and because Gorky Park is where the movie opens. And we said, oh, are we going to be able to see the river, right outside Gorky Park? And he said, oh, no, there'll be 8-9 feet of snow by that time. You'll never see the river by then. Well, when we're getting ready to shoot, and the first scene is, and the biggest part of the movie at the beginning is, there are 3 dead bodies frozen in the snow. Well, there was no snow in February, no snow in Helsinki in February. So we literally had to bring from Lapland snow, literally on trucks, and put it around Gorky Park so that it could look like it was snowing in Gorky Park. Just one of the little production problems that you have when you're making a film.
Since you mentioned the art direction, something I noticed the last time was when there's some scenes that are shot on major thoroughfares where all the signs were changed into Russian. Did that cause any issues? Did people freak out at all when they, like, passersby walking by and be like, wait, what?
They actually, I think the papers knew we were there filming. It's not that big a city. I don't know how many people lived there at the time, but I mean, it's a good sized city, but we really had carte blanche. The Finns were not friends of the Russians, and they were very happy to help us any way they could. But Paul Silbert was quite a production designer. We had worked together on a movie called Heaven Can Wait, in which he won an Oscar for that one. And we did many, I did like 5 or 6 movies with Paul, and 3 or 4 with his brother, Dick Silbert, who won an Oscar for Virginia Woolf.
Yeah, did a great job.
As a reminder, we've got about 30 minutes left in our conversation today with Hawk. If you are a resident on the campus and you have a question or want to share a story, please call us at 1-221. And I am about to log on to Facebook. And if you are on Facebook and have a question or a comment, please go ahead and leave that question there, and I'll put it Hawk's direction. In the meantime, what I would love to have you guys talk about, you and Hawk and Fredda, is about the series that you have undertaken, this incredible opportunity for more people who are writing books about the industry or who are from Hollywood to get to know more about MPTF. And I know that you've got big plans for Inside Hollywood and Behind the Book. Will you share what's working, what's percolating?
I can't talk about people who aren't confirmed yet, but I can say we're going to have Larry Terman very soon, who's one of the great producers. And my God, I mean, he's taught so many people, 25 years as the head of the Peter Stark producing program at USC. We're going to have Irwin Winkler, who, from Rocky to Creed to all of Scorsese's films, to They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Going all the way back there. Irwin's going to be on, I think, February 9th. And I'm working on, or I should say Fredda and I are working on getting a lot more actors, actresses, and writers who, you can let Fredda know, who you'd like to hear if there's a book you've read that you feel might be interesting to all the residents and our Facebook friends. Let Fredda know, and we'll attempt to get it on the air.
Right, and we're not limiting it to entertainment. It's anything that's topical, that you're interested in, and some of our greatest suggestions have come from the residents.
Yeah, great.
When we first started the series, there were 3 residents who approached me and told me about Sam Wasson. And he was our first guest on Behind the Book.
Yeah.
So, we really invite you to send in those suggestions. We also have an email address, which is behindthebook@mptf.com and insidehollywood@mptf.com. And you can email us suggestions as well, or what more you want to hear during these interviews. We're happy to do that. And going forward this year, we'd love to structure everything about our 100th, the history of Hollywood, the history of MPTF, and how we're taking that legacy and going forward with it. So just keep that in mind in your suggestions as well.
Great. And next week I'm interviewing Mary Pickford. If I could do that, that would be something else.
So when Scott and I got married in his mom's backyard, we could overlook Pickfair. So I feel very close to Mary Pickford. Her ghost was with us at the wedding.
Wow. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Did the ghost pick fish or chicken?
I don't remember that one.
And Jen, I want to be at your official wedding when this is all over.
Me too.
I'm sure. And Edgar as well.
Yes. Yeah. We've been trying to negotiate with the hotel, actually, because when we had to cancel last June, they made us pick a new date in 2021. And I mean, my response was like,
who knows?
Yeah. And even if we choose a date, we're going to move it again. So that's the only thing that's been coming up recently about the wedding, and the gratitude that we both have that we have found each other through this pandemic and remain side by side and laughing and dancing whenever humanly possible.
Yeah. For those of you who know, I called Jen last night at home and she didn't pick up the phone. She called me back. She said, "I'm sorry. I was cooking with Edgar and we were dancing disco while we were cooking and didn't hear the phone." I thought, wow, what a wonderful image. 2 young people dancing disco while cooking.
You know,
So we have some weird chat in here, which apparently is from me, although it's not. So I'm going to say it's from Scott, which
Well, it
says,
says we overlooked Danny Kaye's house.
Oh, he's talking about the wedding.
wedding.
Ah,
Okay. But there was also Mary Pickford in the distance.
got it.
And
Okay.
so
Danny
there's,
Kaye's
sorry.
daughter went to school. I think she was a year below me, and she was dating a friend of mine. And we'd go whatever we did during the night, and then she'd say, "Well, come on over." And at like 11 or midnight, there would be Danny Kaye making us Chinese food. I also went to school with Albert Einstein. Now, not the Albert Einstein that you guys know.
The funny one.
Albert Einstein, who changed his name to Albert Brooks and became a great filmmaker and comedian. And he was on my basketball team. And if we had an away game, he would hold court in the bus taking us to the away game. And he was so funny that we laughed so hard that we had no energy to play. We always lost because Albert made us laugh so hard.
I have a couple of questions for you. Nate has just put a good question in the chat that I will put to you in a moment. But we spoke with Jeff Bell this morning. He's a television writer. He started with X-Files. He's written and executive produced for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Angel. And he grew up in Indiana with this passion for filmmaking, went to school at UCLA, and he still gets kind of a childish thrill walking onto a set. You grew up in this town. You were surrounded by people who had legacy, and you knew what passing through the gate at the lot felt like from a very young age. Do you still get the thrill of filmmaking?
I absolutely love it. As a matter of fact, I think it started at Warner Brothers. If you walk the Warner lot, what they've done is they've put the names of the movies that were, let's say stage 5, they put the names of the movies that were shot on stage 5. And as I walk through it, say, yeah, wow. And then Paramount did it. And I've got a lot of movies because I was at Paramount for a lot of my life. Stage 5 was where The Apartment was for Barefoot in the Park with Redford and Jane Fonda. Stage 18 was where we shot the Castevet's apartment for Rosemary's Baby. That's where the black cradle was. Or stage was it stage? I'm trying to think. I think it was stage 6 is where backstage for Wayne's World was with Aerosmith. So yeah, I've got a lot of memories, a lot of memories. And when I go through the gate, there's a young cop at the gate, and I say my name, and hopefully somebody has left me a pass. But think of the movie Sunset Boulevard, where she comes back to Paramount, and sees what her life, was. I still get the chills. Yeah. Thanks for that memory, Jen. That's really sweet.
Of course. I'm going to say that Columbia and Sony started that because 20 years ago, it's the old MGM lot. And they put all of the titles of, like, Wizard of Oz was shot there, and all of the Esther Williams, classic.
Where the pool was, yeah.
Yes. Just musical after musical after musical. Okay.
Yeah.
So a question from Lindsay, or a comment from Lindsay on Facebook. I'm glad you're interviewing Andrew. I have been hoping that you would. He's got a wonderful life, and absolutely that's a book waiting to happen. So
yes, I agree, Lindsay.
We'll get that set up very, very soon. The next question was, Since they announced the newly restored edition of the Ten Commandments, will you talk about the impact of that movie as a film goer?
Yeah, I mean, I had, you know, I think it came out in 1955, so I was 9. I had my 10th birthday. And for my 10th birthday, I went to the Stanley Warner Theater on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills with 9 of my friends, so there's 10 of us. My mother made spaghetti and meatballs first, and we ate spaghetti and meatballs, and then we went to the Stanley Warner and watched the Ten Commandments. And now I had seen movies on television, and I had seen a few movies in, small movie houses like the Beverly or the, I guess the Fox. But to see the Ten Commandments on that huge screen at the Stanley Warner and see what it was about, I think it's then that I decided, that I had been on movie sets my whole life, but I really wanted to create that kind of stuff. And I got much more involved with wanting to know history. I majored in history, and I think it was because I wanted to start all the way back there and go all the way through up to today. So it had a huge impact on me, huge. It was the first real, movie.
Did you end up working with people that were connected to the Ten Commandments?
Oh, I'm sure I did. One of the things that I hate to say about my age, when I started in the business, it was 1965. I've been in the business 75, 85, 95, 05, 15. I've been in the business 56 years. 56 years before 1965 was 1911. So someone who was a young person working in 1911 could be still working in 1965 that I met. And there were people, there was a huge fight on Rosemary's Baby between John Cassavetes and Roman Polanski. And I was aghast at what was being said. And there was an older electrician standing next to me. And when it was over, he looked at me, he said, "I've been in the business since 1920, right? So he had been in the business 47 years. And he said, "I have never seen a fight like that." So, there are makeup people and special effects people that I worked with that were on, and Cecil B. DeMille, if you talk about Ten Commandments, stages 18, 19, no, not 18. Can't remember. The stages over on the left at Paramount opened all 3 stages so that the special effects of the water, splitting in the Red Sea were done on those stages. So yeah, in those days, even in the 60s, they still had an electric department, a grip department, a prop department, wardrobe department. So all of those people were still working that had worked on Ten Commandments. Oh, Danny McCauley, the first AD on Rosemary's Baby, he was a second AD on the Ten Commandments.
Did you ever work with Eugene Mazzola?
No, but I knew his son was an editor on a movie I did with Peter Fonda.
So the Mazzola family, again, like major roots in Hollywood history. Eugene played the Pharaoh's son. And went on to be AD, first AD, and worked a lot.
Well, maybe it was his brother, because the movie we made in 1969 called The Hired Hand that Peter Fonda starred in and directed.
With Lenny.
His brother, I guess, was the editor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, his other brother, Lenny, was also an art director.
Yeah, well, they covered
They did. They were in all aspects. They could make their own movie if they wanted.
Can we go back a little bit to Rosemary's Baby, which you talked about? I know we're running out of time, but I remember when you were on campus talking about the book, and you talked about the volatile relationship that was going on during the making of the movie with your star and her famous singer husband.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I thought you meant Cassavetes and Polanski.
Nope.
But yeah, no. Mia and I are about the same age. And when she got the role, again, I was the, what was I? I wasn't the second AD. I wasn't an AD yet. This was 1967, and I had been working for William Castle, who owned the rights and was the producer. So I was the assistant to Bill on the movie. And since I had been a dialogue coach with several movies, including Barefoot in the Park, I was the dialogue coach on Rosemary's Baby. And so being the dialogue coach, I was always running lines with Mia and Cassavetes and Ruth Gordon. Ruth Gordon, boy, what an actress. Any rate, my dad had been head of Sinatra's company in the early 60s. So we knew about Frank, and I knew about his volatility. And, he was like 30 years or more older than Mia. But theirs was, in today's world, oh my God, every Inside Edition, and, they'd be all over it. In those days, they didn't have that. They had the movie magazines. Mm-hmm. And Frank was about to make a movie called The Detective at Fox, and he wanted Mia to star with him in that movie. And I don't know why, but I guess early movies that I worked on went way over schedule. But Rosemary's Baby was scheduled to go something like, I don't know, 60 days, 55, 60 days. Only it went really slow. And we were way behind schedule. But the producer of the movie, Robert Evans, I'm not the producer, but the head of this company, Robert Evans, loved this movie and was going to do everything and anything to make sure this was a hit movie. And Sinatra was calling and using his lawyers and everybody saying, no, Mia has to finish by such and such a date, or, there's going to be trouble. And Bob Evans and all the business affairs and lawyers at Paramount said, sorry, pal, she's got a contract and she's going to finish the movie. And when that's over, she can go shoot your movie. Well, Frank put a lot of pressure on Mia, saying, Mia, you got to leave this movie and you got to come with me or our relationship is over. And put me in a very, very difficult position. And we all knew that Mia was giving a great performance and it was going to be an amazing film. And at one point, Mia finally said, no, I'm finishing this movie. And if you're ready, I'll be ready for you afterwards. Now, a little side note before I tell you the end of this story is my dad had a condo near a country club down in Palm Springs, which is where Frank lived. And my dad would go have lunch with Frank once in a while at this country club. And Mia was there and I played golf, but I went in and had lunch one day. Frank and his cronies and my dad were up at one end of the table and Mia and I were at the other end. And Mia didn't want to be there and neither did I. It was all a bunch of old people like me now. And we got in a golf cart and rode around and you could tell there was trouble in paradise. So at any rate, one day while we're filming, Mickey Rudin, Frank's lawyer, showed up on the set, walked over to Mia and handed her the divorce papers. And it was a terrible day for Mia, very tough day for everybody on the set. And of course, it hit all the newspapers and everything else. But Frank was not happy. But Mia went on, and I think she was nominated for an Oscar, wasn't she, for the role? And Rosemary's Baby was a huge hit movie. Huge hit movie.
Yeah.
So a couple of additional questions before we wrap it up.
Okay.
And I just wanted to, on a personal note, when you talked about your mom making spaghetti and meatballs for your 10th birthday before going to see the movie, we had the pleasure at MPTF of getting to know Ruth. And I love that visual of her just like scooping out some spaghetti and meatballs for your birthday. So from Facebook, we have gotten the request to hear the story that is in your book, Magic Time, We didn't even talk about where the title came from, which is another amazing story. But Lindsay's request is to hear about your bar mitzvah and how you became your own man at a little bit of a later date than your 13th birthday.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. As a lot of you know, since you're residents of the home or some on Facebook, my father was a very, very well-loved man in Hollywood. He was so well-loved that even from the time I was a little kid, anytime I went anywhere with him, and I was introduced to him as Howard Koch Jr., they would say, "Oh, I love your dad. You know, 5 years old, do you know what a wonderful man your father is? You must be so proud to have a dad like that." Well, they didn't tell me that once a month or once a year. I heard that just about every day of my life. And not just when I was growing up, when I got into the business. Whenever I'd go somewhere in the business, I'd get on a movie set. Hey, I worked with your dad, and did you know what a wonderful man he is? You must be so proud. And that went on my whole life. And it was really wonderful, but at the same time, it was hard because I just, as somebody would walk up to me, I'd go, "Oh, he's going to tell me what a wonderful man my dad is." And I had been in several relationships, and they hadn't all worked out. And a relationship I had been in had just broken up. And I was with a good friend of mine, Gary Lucchese, who used to be head of Paramount. We were having lunch, and I said, I'm going to be 50. And man, I can't go through another breakup of another relationship. I'm in bad shape. I got to do something else. Instead of a relationship, I got to look for something for me. And he said, "Well, I've been to your children's bar and bat mitzvahs. Can you get bar mitzvahed at 50? Because I know you weren't bar mitzvahed at 13. And I said, "Gary, what a great idea." Had no idea. Man, what a great idea. And I said, "But I don't know if I can get bar mitzvahed at 50. So I made some calls, and somebody sent me to a rabbi named Jonathan Omerman, who had a little building in the Miracle Mile. And I walked in to have a meeting with him, and I introduced myself, and he asked me to tell him a little bit about myself, told him what I had done, and told him about my dad. And he said, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a movie producer." He said, No. Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a father, and I'm a son." He looked at me, he said, "Who are you?" And I don't know where it came from in me, but I said, "Oh, I'm a Jewish man." And he said, "Well, that's a start." He said, "What's your Hebrew name?" And I said, "Well, my parents were non-religious. I don't have a Hebrew name." And then he said the words to me that changed my life. He said to me, "Well, you can have your own name." He meant Hebrew name. But when he said that, I broke down. And he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I just realized after 49 years, I've always had my father's name. I want my own name." And he said to me, this rabbi said to me, "You can have your own name." What? A rabbi told me I could have my own name. What do you want to, do you have a name that you always wanted to be? Larry, Frank, Jerry, Fredda, Jennifer, No, I hadn't. He said, "Well, do you ever have a nickname?" And I said, "Well, my initials are HWK, and I wrote them on school books. A couple of people called me Hawk, but it really didn't stick." And he said, "Well, do you know anything about hawks?" And I said, yeah, bird of prey." And he said, "Well, hawks mate for life." And I said, "Well, that's something I'm not very good at." He said, "But they also can see from horizon to horizon, and they can see a squirrel a half a mile away. Wouldn't it be great if you could see the panoramic of your life and the detail always at the same time?" And I thought, but isn't hawk a kind of a stuck-up name? And he said, "Only if you allow it to be." And so I went away for a week to Telluride, and hawks were flying all over the place, and I read all about hawks and looked at Indian medicine hawk stuff, and met a Native American up there who was selling trinkets. And on this little trinket was the word listen, a cloud, and like a lightning bolt. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, do you know the way we are so awake and aware and attuned between the lightning and the thunder? How we listen. We're attuned. We see it, we feel it, we smell it, we taste it. Wouldn't it be great if you could be that awake and aware all the time instead of just between the lightning and the thunder? And I felt like, oh, that's my A in Hawk. HWK, my initials. And if I put the A in there, I will try for the rest of my life to be much more awake and aware. And, you know, long story short, I got bar mitzvahed. I changed my name to Hawk. That's 25 years ago. And I've been Hawk for 25 years, and I'm very proud of it. And I met Molly, I don't know, 9-10 months later. She only met me as Hawk, and we've been together 25 years. So I did mate for life.
Has she been able to attest that you've stayed awake that whole time?
Most of the time. She gets angry at me a few times, but we've done very well.
You are a beautiful example of joy and happiness, and a couple that supports one another. Because not only did you write this book, so did Molly.
Yes. Have I sent you, did I send you the thing she wrote about our dog, Willard?
No, but I would love to see it.
Oh my God. We just lost our dog, Willard. And Molly wrote, well, I'll send it to the two of you, but get some Kleenex with you, please. So.
Okay. Deal.
Right. That was a beautiful story. I do want to say something that's on the back of your book, this, and I think it kind of sums up everything that we just heard, which is a quote from Mike Myers. And it says, is there anybody that Koch hasn't worked with? Magic Time should be required reading for 3 types of people. 1, those starting in show business. 2, those who have been in show business for a long time. And 3, everyone else. Like every movie Hawk has made, Magic Time is a fascinating journey of self-identity. I love this book. And I can honestly say that I love this book, and anybody who reads it will love it, because you've had and continue to have just a fascinating life. And the fact that you are such a great guy makes it all the better.
Thanks so much, you two. My God, I had no idea this was going to happen today. And thank you both. I feel the love so much. I can't believe it.
The calls and accolades are already pouring in.
Exactly.
On, Alan, hold on. I gotta go, guys. This is my
All
brother.
right. We love you.
right.
Glad you
Love
do
you all.
however you do that. Thank you so much, Hawk.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.